August 9, 1940, German bombers hit Birkenhead. A week later, they staged their first raid on Liverpool. The very first attack was aimed at the docks north of the city, but by the second night, incendiary bombs were falling in houses in residential areas. By the fourth raid, gas and water mains were damaged, and civilian casualties began to rise. There was little chance of the RAF protecting Liverpool with air cover at night, though some fighters did take on the attacking bombers. Anti-aircraft batteries tried to make things at least uncomfortable for the raiders, but by and large, Merseyside's population had to take it.
It was really terrifying. You know, you could hear this. It was like a drum, you know, like a hum, 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 what the aircraft did. And then you just hear a whizzing sound, and you just wait to where it was going to drop, you know, the bomb.
When the raid started, all traffic had to come to a halt. And when the trams and that were coming down Edge Lane, as soon as the siren went, they had to stop, and people had to get out, drivers and everybody. And we used to bring them in our house and make them cups of tea and that, you know, and we were all down in the cellar.
When we were bombed on that particular night, it came through the side, or rather the front, and it hit a dividing wall between the two houses in a cellar and blew up. Now, the house next to us did get the most of the blast, and all the people in the house were killed except one. Now, when the bomb fell, it was the strangest of feelings I've felt personally. I've never forgotten it, as if my head was bursting. I could feel my both ears, and I could taste my mouth full of soot, smoke, pitch black, but very, very quiet. There was absolute stillness. And then I heard a very faint moaning sound to the right of me. Still couldn't say anything. And then I saw the civil defence chap. I could just make out the tin hat and the uniform coming through a hole in the wall. There's a massive hole in the wall on the left-hand side of me. And you know, I'd just got up. I could stand up, although I had no sense of bearings other than I had to get to this hole in the wall. Then my father came out of this bedroom, and I could see him in the flashlight, and I could see blood on his neck.
The trail of destruction spread across the whole of Merseyside. Air raid shelters saved many lives but could do nothing to protect property. 200,000 homes were damaged. A train lies buried in rubble at Birkenhead Park Station. The destruction was arbitrary. Untouched houses on one side of this Bebington Street, on the other, total devastation. Inevitably, the hardship brought people closer together, but Merseyside's greatest tragedy of all was approaching. On the night of November 28, 1940, 166 people were killed by a single bomb at the shelter beneath Durning Road College.
The people came out of one shelter in Edge Lane because it had been bombed, and they were brought round to the college in Durning Road, and they were all transferred into there, and they all got in there and they got a direct hit.
Then there was the bomb dropped and everyone was just sort of screaming and crying, and everywhere was pitch black, and there was like a taste of soot, and nobody sort of moved. They were all just quivering, you know, against this wall. I know I was at the time because I was only very young, and you just stayed there for a long time, and then you hear voices saying, there's some more here, there's some more here, and somebody got hold of my hand to say, come on. And it was just pitch black. You couldn't see where you were going at all. And you're just walking over either rubble or... I've thought back since, it must have been bodies, because it wasn't hard I've played on a bomb site since, and you know, it wasn't stones and that, it was just soft you walking through. And we went round the wall to where the warden was, and somebody struck a match, and that sticks in my mind, that more than anything at all, that there was a lady sitting in the corner. Now, I mean, she might have only been a young lady, but to me at that time she seemed very old, and her head was sort of squashed, and there was all blood. Her eyes were open, there was all blood coming down her face, and somebody shouted, "Turn that bloody light out." And then it was just dark after that, and we were just sort of arm in arm, like, you know, people pulling you this way and that way. And then there seemed to be like a window high up, very high up it was. And I remember somebody picking me up and pushing me through the window, and the warden shouting outside, "Who does this child belong to?" And then my mother shouting, "Do not even."
For the survivors, life went on. The order of the day was business as usual, though running the coal merchant's firm in Langdale Street would have been a problem after this particular raid. Community aid centres looked after those bombed out from their homes, though some, of course, felt they just had to stay and keep an eye on the place. Businesses, too, took a terrible hammering. This is Watson's car showroom in Argyle Street, Birkenhead. It took a direct hit that winter. There was no let-up as Christmas approached. Liverpool market was hit, more homes were destroyed.
The whole front, it was a house 3-storey with an attic on the top. And the whole front had gone. You could just walk in the front. And they put soldiers on the outside, standing there to stop people from looting. And very, very funny things happened. The clothes hanging up in the hall were all in the bathroom. And there was a bowler hat in a bag on the piano, and it was still in the bag, but the rim was off. There was very strange things happened.
Next thing, I just woke up and looked at the stars and wondered, am I in heaven? And I thought, it can't be heaven, there's stars up there. And then I moved and something red hot touched my back. And I've got the marks on my back, you know, shrapnel marks. And then in the air, I saw these like red hot tubes. I don't know if that was part of the bomb or what. And then my elder sister came to, and she just started screaming, you know, for the lady next door, but the lady next door was out. And then we must have just passed out and, you know, been in a state of shock. And then we heard voices, and the air raid wardens came from the back, and they started lifting us out. And when they come to me, they said, "Be careful with this child." I had a gabardine mag on over my pyjamas, and they said, "All her back looks as if it's gone in," but it was all off my mother, you know.
They were a big family, but one boy wasn't. One of my cousins wasn't there, but the other cousin was blown across the road. He was saved, but the others went, little babies as well. There was babies as well killed, because there was a mass funeral. My mother and all went to the funeral. It was a mass funeral of 9 of them.
Well, she just lay in that bed with bandages all around her head, and all her arm was bandaged. She had 2 holes in her head, fractured skull, and concussion of the brain, I think she had. And she was just all bandaged, her arms, you know, were all burnt. She was unconscious all the time. The only time she ever knew anybody's was when my brother came home from sea, and he came in the hospital in the afternoon and walked up to the bed, and the sister said to him, "Who's this, Mrs. Ben?" And she said, she opened her eyes and she said, "It's my son, Eddie." Yet she didn't know us, we were with her all the time. That's the only time she ever, you know, regained consciousness. And then we were discharged from the hospital after a few weeks, and my mother was still in, and then about a week or so later, she died.
For children evacuated to the country, it was a worrying time. Unsettled as they were, wild rumours did the rounds, describing the total destruction of Liverpool in the heavy Christmas air raids.
Most of the children at that time were in one school together. They put us in like what they call the institute, and we were all together. And we all thought we were orphans, because somebody came in and said the place had been flattened. So naturally at 9 or 10, we thought we were orphans. So when the teacher came in and reassured us, all the eyes got wiped and everybody felt better, you know.
Who were?